Hello, my name is Claudia Salazar, and today I will be sharing about a chapter from the book Native Studies Keywords titled The Place Where We All Live and Work Together, a gendered analysis of sovereignty, written by Leanne Betas Mossack Simpson. So to begin, I'm going to give you a brief summary of this chapter. This chapter is Miss Simpson's analysis on sovereignty and how it challenges the Western and colonial ideas of sovereignty that are often framed by ownership, control, and hierarchy. It states that true sovereignty is not about domination, but it's about respect, reciprocal relationships with the land, non-human beings, and humans. It talks about how colonialism disrupted sovereignty by imposing the patriarchy and rigid gender roles, which we see that, right, in how cis white men are, how they are the ones that control so much of what happens in our society, right? And how much women, two-spirit people, and other gender diverse people are set aside, are erased. It talks about restoring indigenous sovereignty that requires building gender justice, relational practices, and respect for diversity. And ultimately, that genuine decolonization requires restoring relationships between people, land, and all living things. Some major themes from this chapter. The first is the indigenous understanding of sovereignty. It's understanding that sovereignty is rooted in relationship with the land, water, animals, and each other. Right, that it is lived daily and that it is not enacted, it cannot be enacted through government or treaties or laws. That trying to enact sovereignty in that way, that is how we have that the West, that is how we have the Western idea of sovereignty. There's an emphasis on reciprocity, mutual aid, about unbalance and helping each other, that sovereignty to indigenous people in relation to political systems is used to define authentic power, right? Power that is shared, power that is used for the good of others, of the land, of other living things, instead of the sovereignty that we see today that comes from authoritarian power, that comes from control, that talks about having power over people instead of letting people govern themselves. And that ultimately sovereignty means really creating safety for bodies, right? And it means bringing in Western medicine and indigenous medicine to be able to care for each other. Next is the role of gender in traditional indigenous sovereignty. Many indigenous nations before colonialism had non-binary gender systems and gender diverse roles. Gender was fluid, it was respected, and it was tied to responsibilities, not a hierarchy. And then it's very important to see that distinction, right? That hierarchy is who is over who, and it's about power over and dominance versus responsibility, saying if I am going to be responsible for others, so I will want to, because I feel that genuine responsibility. I'm going to want to do what is best for others. I'm going to want to do what is best for the land. We will want to do what is best for the land, right? For the communities that we are in. It emphasizes that women, two-spirit, and gender diverse people were central to governance, knowledge keeping, and community health, that it cannot be emphasized enough. In fact, in the chapter, Ms. Simpson shares of another author's work, who talks about even what the fact that women are bear children, right? Katsi Cook shares a very significant quote that says, "Women are our first environment." So, and that is saying like everyone first starts in the womb, right? In the womb of a woman, right? And so it's important to recognize that women are central to sovereignty, that two-spirit peoples are central to sovereignty, that we cannot have sovereignty, self-governance without them, right? And lastly, um, the impact of colonialism on gender and sovereignty. The imposition of Western gender binaries and patriarchy disrupted Indigenous governance. It took away that shared power and knowing that we are one with the land. Um, it lost women and two-spirit peoples tradition and authority and recognition because colonialism erases all of that. It erases them, it erases their contributions. Colonialism violently imposed the patriarchy, capitalism that interrupted indigenous governance and relational ways of being. And we have what we have today, which is power over, which is violence, which is oppression. And ultimately, that rebuilding sovereignty through gender justice, that is in order to be able to do that, there needs to be a rebuilding of Indigenous sovereignty by restoring gender respect and responsibilities. That we need to have an emphasis on community healing, language revitalization, land-based practices, right? Being one with the land again. And that sovereignty cannot be reclaimed without healing gender violence and restoring relational balance, right? We see it today with violence against women and girls, two-spirit people, just so much cruelty that sovereignty cannot be reclaimed. It cannot be restored without healing gender violence. And to end, I would like to pose a question. This chapter speaks a lot on care, consent as key to living out sovereignty. How does this help us envision a different political system, knowing what sovereignty is, that it can be shared power? How does this help us re-envision a new way of living? How does this help us re-envision a new system where everyone can fit, where everyone can be recognized and where everyone can live? Thank you very much.